Well, hello. What an adventure. Who knew that we were going to have some fun with a tornado warning? So we're going to be running a little bit late. I've got more information than what I can actually present within this amount of time. So let me first introduce myself and tell you a little bit about me, and then I want to hear from you about kind of where I want to go with this and what information you really want to hear about, because there's so much that I could tell you that we could get in the weeds and stay there for quite a while. So my husband and I own Rocky Point Ranch, and you can see here, and so what we do is we raise beef and lamb, and we do it in a holistic management system. You can see our brand up here. It's the Broken Arrow H, and the reason why that, just to kind of give you a little bit about who we are and our heart and that type of thing, is the reason that's like that is because everything that we do is for the glory of God, and so it is a broken arrow that points to Christ. Or you can look at it and you can say that somebody said, hey, that looks like a man without a head on it, and it is. That's a good point. Looks like a man without a head, because we're not the ones that's running the show. Sometimes we get to thinking as human beings that we can outsmart God, but we can't. And so everything we do is about that, and so we are subject to Jesus Christ, our Savior. And so that's the message behind our brand. My husband and I both grew up in ranching families, and when we got together, we knew that he had actually been walking the same road I had, been trying to figure out a better way for that, because there are so many things going on in agriculture now. And so, of course, I've talked to you a little bit about Christ, and I want to tell you that, everything that we have here on earth is God has gave us dominion over that. Well, that doesn't just mean to control it. It means that we have a responsibility to take good care of it. And so I think some things we've been doing in agriculture have not been honoring those things. And so I grew up in a ranching family. My husband did too. He spent most of his adult life actually in Afghanistan after growing up in a ranching family. But God was putting on our heart a long time ago that there has got to be a better way for this, because as you look at the agricultural industry, the 2022 Ag Census data says we've lost over 107,000 independent cattle ranchers in just the last 5 years. That's 21,000 cattle producers per year over the last 5 years. And so that's down 2.5 million mother cows per year. We're actually, from the data last year, we are at the lowest cattle inventory in 70 years. And so when you look at that, in the last 42 years, we've lost 665,000 cattle ranchers and farmers. We are now at 622,000 left. And so the cow herd, like I said, is the lowest in 70 years. So there's a lot of things going on in agriculture. So when you look at that, what is our motivation is, like a lot of you guys, then I want to ask a few questions now before we move any further. How many of you are interested in this because you have some type of agriculture background and you're just looking at a better way to do this? Is there anybody in here like that? So got 2 or 3, 4 of you. Okay. How many are just new to it? You're just looking for a way to provide your own food, and food security is really your concern because you've kind of seen what's happened in the world, and you're wondering, hey, what's going to happen if the grocery stores can't have it anymore? Is that kind of the motivation? So we got about half and half here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go over some things. How many, let me ask another question. How many are interested in the lamb? How many are interested in the beef side? Okay, so we got both. So I'm going to try to go over this pretty quick because we're going to have to condense it a little bit more than what I even have. So I'll tell you a little bit more. This is my husband. He is actually state senator for this area and has been for the last 4 years. These are actually our 2 children, our 2 youngest children. This is our family. And so for us, the ranching operation is about them, and it's about a lifestyle and wanting to be able, I guess we got tired of the rat race. And here you can see one day evening I actually managed to catch them when the moon was coming up, and I thought that was a pretty cool picture. And because of them and their future, then I have dedicated my life first to them and to our family, and I'm blessed to be able to do that. But I was tired of the rat race of this world that seems to send us all in different directions instead of working together as a family. And so how many of you are looking because you really want to get back to those basics and to be self-reliant, and you're worried about food security and that type thing? And so that's what it was for us. My husband and I, before we ever even got together, we both were reading these type of books because we already felt like agriculture was going the wrong way. And I'll tell you why I say that. Having grown up with ranchers and everything, then when you look at what we're doing, we have become so dependent upon big ag that we spray chemicals on our soil, on our place, to keep the weeds out. And what that actually does, it does kill the weeds, but it also kills many of the microbes that are in the soil that actually feed and make you have healthy soil and plants. So when you kill those microbes, you actually make it more conducive to the weeds. And here's what I say about, sometimes we think we're smarter than God. When you do that, then God has designed weeds are actually a way for the land to heal itself. It brings up nutrients that we've actually destroyed from deep down in there. Have you noticed how weeds always outgrow your regular grass? Well, they have a deeper taproot, and they reach down and grab minerals that are deeper in the soil and bring them back to the surface. So that is actually God's design to heal our soil, and we're doing that to ourselves. So when we spray our pastures with various chemicals from, Graze on P plus D, I can list all kinds of herbicides and things, then we're actually defeating ourselves because we're making it where it's more conducive to weeds. Then next year we got to do it again because now we even have more weeds, and it's a never-ending cycle. Not only is that not good for the soil, but it's not profitable for us as producers. This is why people are getting out of agriculture, is because it's not because they don't like the lifestyle, it's because it's not profitable. It doesn't make real good sense to do that. And so many are going under because let me just start out, and I'm going to say something that you're probably not going to want to hear, but if you need to be able to afford to buy the land some other way. Don't think you're going to get in agriculture now and be able to pay for the land by farming and ranching. You need to have an off-farm income or something like that. So I want to give you a realistic, I'm not going to give you some pie in the sky, you do this and you're going to be able to, live your dreams and all of that. But it is something that you're going to have to sacrifice in some other area, and you're going to have to find a way to pay for it outside of this. Now, to be able to provide for your family and maybe be able to make a living to maintain, there is the potential for that. And so, I already said about that. So here's where when we read, my husband and I had come to the same conclusion that we need to start talking about our soil. And so here is the motto for our ranch: is healthy soil, healthy livestock, healthy meat, and healthy lives. It's all about providing a better product that's healthier for not only our family, but other people. And it's possible, while we do this on a large scale, it would be something somebody can do on a small scale, especially with the sheep, and I'll talk more about those here in a little bit. But you can see here, the connection between the health of the soil, the health of our food, and the health of our families should be a central point of importance. Farmers that grow sustainably and organically understand the importance of soil health and participate in practices that prevent soil erosion, replenish nutrients, and encourage soil microbe growth. Everything begins with the foundations of how God made it. And really what we're doing when we sell meat, I know we've got all these places that want to do fake meat and everything like that now, is God gave us the best way to do that. The cow, the beef animal, the sheep, goat, all of those animals are the converters of solar energy through grass into the most nutrient-dense protein that mankind has available. When will we learn that we cannot outsmart God? I mean, you guys know when margarine came around, right? And they said, oh, this is way better than butter and all that. Come to find out, it's like only one molecule different than plastic, and it has caused all kinds of health issues in people. And so now they've got fake meat that they want to try to pass off to all of us. But what we want to offer is something better. It's real meat, and it's not real meat that has been done in an unnatural way, because while we can produce a lot, this is some of our grass finished beef, and just to show you, but when you look at grain finishing obviously is the way we do most of our meat in America and even around the world. And the process in and of itself is a way for us to feed a lot of people. And so we are able to feed a lot of people in America, and it's a good thing. But on the other side of that, we've given up something, because we changed the whole dynamic of how God made an animal to be able to digest grass and do it in a slow process and put on fat, and we make it be a very unnatural process where they stand and eat grains and eat a lot of them. It changes the pH, it changes all of the good cholesterol, bad cholesterol ratios, and that's where red meat has got its bad rap, is from the grain finishing, because then when you have those ratios out of whack, that's why bad cholesterol is left in your arteries and all that type thing. And so when you do look at the difference between that, this is some of our lamb, that was our beef, this is some of our lamb, and so you can see there that's some of the bone-in lamb chops. And so when we look at the difference between grain and grass finished, then here's the difference in your health benefits, and it's a pretty obvious, thing that how that would be. Now, some of you will know that when you go to the grocery store, you see a lot of grass fed, and let me tell you, that is a marketing gimmick. Grass, every animal, every beef animal, lamb, all that are grass fed. They eat grass at some point, right? Where you want to look for is grass finished, because that's where the time takes, because all of them have had grass and they've been fed grass, but grass finished is the key. And that is a very slow process. So from the time of conception till the time we actually process a beef animal, it takes 36 months. So it's a very long process to get to that. That's why it costs more. But as we all know, things that are really good for you, it's not instantaneous. And I know we like things a lot faster, but that's not the way that works. So our beef animals that we market at Rocky Point Ranch have been with us from at least 36 months, or let's say 32 to 36 months. You have to have high quality grazing, and then you have to, of course, have been selecting cattle that are able to make it on low inputs. And on our place, we don't use any chemicals. Only thing that we do is that we do mechanical brush, so no herbicides. So to control the weeds, we use two different things that because as we read those books, and I think I gave a list of them there, Joel Salatin is a very good source of those type things, is to look at high density or management intensive grazing. And I'm going to show you some examples of that here very shortly of what that looks like in action. And and then multi-species grazing. And we use sheep and goats and cattle, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then mechanical brush removal when needed. And we don't use that very often, but we do have to do that from time to time. And so we don't use any type of herbicides or anything on there. So the high density mob grazing is where you take cattle. For instance, in cattle, you can do it with cattle or sheep, and you can do it on a small acreage or a large acreage. It's just you're going to divide your place up with an electric fence. And so I will show you a little bit more about that in a minute. And then the multi-species grazing, because what cattle won't eat, sheep will eat. They spend about 40 to 50% of their time eating forbs and browsing and brambles and that type thing. Goats will spend 70 to 80% time eating that type stuff. So if you really want to clean your place up, then and control those type things, then you have to put them with the cattle. Cattle do very little browsing and eating brambles. They're actually very selective eaters. And because of that, they'll even go through your pasture. And if you guys notice when you drive by people's pastures, there'll be areas where the grass is like this tall, and then you have some with it this tall. And so they're very picky. They go around and they like certain things. It's like going to a buffet and then you only go eat the dessert, because that tastes the best. Well, that's what cows do. They go pick out what they like and what tastes the best if they're given the choice. So with the high intensity mob grazing, you actually overcome that. And so as you can see here, this is a group of cattle that we have. You see the tall grass here, and you see the short grass there. So what we have done is we bring these cattle into, they'll be, like in this particular group, I think there was 300 cows in that group, and my husband put an electric fence around and only gives them about 2 acres at a time. And he would do that, this is before he became senator, because he doesn't have the time to do that anymore. But we would only let them in there and give them a couple of hours, and they would mow it just like what you see there. It looked like this 2 hours ago. And so then he comes back and he has, this is on a reel, and you reel it up. And when he reeled it up, then the cattle moved to the next thing. Let me show, this is another picture that you can see, same deal. This is an example. You can see the line from where they've grazed and where they're moving into. And so just kind of show you what they do. They literally look like they mow it. So rather than them coming in and going around and picking, they know if they don't eat it, then Susie right next to me fixing to eat it. And I may not like it real well, but I'm kind of hungry. So they will eat everything. So rather than them going around, if you turn them in a whole 80-acre piece and give them everything, they will go around and pick and choose. But they don't have a choice here, and they learn really quick. And you'll see when they walk into these pastures, into a new paddock, that there's another example of line. See how those cows are all right there? That's the paddock that they were in, and they were about to be moved into this one, and he was laying it out. And so you see how they're all together, and they just, that's why it's called mob grazing. They just mob it, and they eat everything. And then your weeds and your good grass are on equal playing field. And that way you can control the weeds without using herbicides and that type thing. Am I bumping this by doing this? Okay, because it's kind of pulling on me, so. Okay. Say that again? Is that just string? That is just one wire electric fence. That completely controls the cattle, because they get broke to it once they touch it once. This is a very high, it has 10,000 volts going through it. So and when it hits them once, they remember it from that point on out. So you need a really good electric fence. We'll talk a little bit about that. And I told you we could get into the weeds, and I could talk about a lot of that type stuff. So here's my husband. I'm about to roll this up and let these cattle into this particular part. And you can see where they've grazed on the other side of him and here. Oh, this is actually the video. Let me go back to that. So you see those cows? They were waiting, and they knew he was about to turn them into another pasture. So they run in there, and they all go to just immediately, as soon as they can get to where they kind of moved out everybody's way, they start grazing. I wish I had a little longer one to show you and watch them all, and how quickly that they start taking. See how that cow just, and first they take the seed heads off, and then they start working their way down. But by using this method, we were able to not only, we could run on more cattle than we could by doing the other way, and had more grass. And I'll show you some pictures of what happened to our place. I wish I had some before and after, before we started doing this type of operation. So there's some of our grass and what has happened with it, and I want to show you a picture. You can see here, over a period of 2 years of us doing that, we have a robust diversity in our plant life on our ranch. Whereas before, we were constantly fighting broom sedge and all different types of grasses that cattle don't even like. And you can see here there's yellow hop, there's vetch, there's Bermuda grass, there's just a little bit of everything mixed in that. This is my husband standing in the field after we had been doing this for 2 years. That is vetch that he's standing in, and you can see that is thigh high, and this is with no fertilizer, no herbicides, no anything, and you don't see any weeds and that type of thing. This is what is possible and can be done, and anybody can replicate this. It's just a matter of having the time, and when I say management intensive, it is a process. This would be your job. This isn't something you're going to do on the side, which is why we don't do it right now, because I'm homeschooling kids and doing lots of other things, and then he's the state senator. We do a rotational grazing right now, But I want you guys to know this is possible. You don't have to have chemicals and herbicides and fertilizers and all that. God has given you everything you need right here with it. With the soil that you have, you can improve it. The cows, this is something else that I didn't point out. When those cows are concentrated in that area, when they eat grass, what comes out the other end? Poop, which is organic fertilizer, right? So they fertilize the very place that they're at. And so that concentrates all of it, and that helps build your soil microbes. And so that kind of showed you a little more of a close-up. And we've talked about cows are selective eaters. And so unlike cows, sheep and goats do a great job of controlling weeds and thistles and honeysuckle, the multiflora rose, all of those type things. So of course, we started with doing what you saw, those pictures, that was before we added we had any sheep or goats. Now, our areas that we have that are grown like this, the cattle would still be particular. Even when we did the mob grazing, they wouldn't eat the multiflora rose, they don't eat lots of other different things like that. So we had to have something else to help control those. Otherwise, we're going to be constantly fighting them with brush hogs. So we added the sheep. And I'm going to show you this video. I wish that there's not a sound to it that you can hear, I don't think. So you can see these are called hair sheep, and there is a goat in there. That's our milk goat, actually. In this particular group, I took this last year, and this is an area that we're trying to control and reclaim, and you can see there's all types of weeds and briars and brambles in this particular place on our ranch. And so you look at what this ewe here, for instance, if you watch her, she's picking off every little bit of that. Well, cows won't do that. Goats will, but I'll talk to you more about goats. We don't have goats anymore, and there's a reason why that Satan is depicted as a goat, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. But you can see what they do and how they just come in and they start, and I just put them in this particular pasture, and so that's how you control those particular areas, and the sheep are really amazing for that. Our sheep, we did, up until we had the drought, we had not fed them in the winter. We don't ever feed them any feed, ever. Now we did have the drought, so we didn't have a whole lot of things for them to eat for this past winter, so they have had to have some hay this past winter. Unless we have snow on the ground, that's the only time they've ever been. And they put on more fat naturally than any livestock that we have. And so that was the sheep. I don't need that. So here's what they look like on pasture. And so what's beautiful to me about the sheep is for if you have a small acreage, you don't have to have as much big equipment, all of the things that come along with cattle. Not to mention the danger, because you have a large animal, even with the cattle, and me living and growing up ranching and all that, there are accidents that happen. I mean, they're large animals and they're unpredictable. And so the inputs to be able to raise sheep is so much less, and you can do it on a small acreage. And let me tell you what I think the most beautiful part is you start worrying about the food supply and where you can get it. Just like it's no different than slaughtering a deer. You can do that yourself out there in in your garage or hanging from a tree limb, and provide food for your family and do it on a small acreage with no inputs. You're not dependent upon feed at the feed store. You're not dependent upon anything except for what you have right there. And so that's been our vision. So from the very start, when I started with 24 ewes, and I've culled mercies without mercy over the years. And right now we have somewhere over 350 ewes. We've got about 500 and something, maybe close to 600 babies that were born just in April. So we've got sheep everywhere right now. This is what they looked like when we first started. And this is, I talked about us working together as a family, and these are some of my favorite memories of my kids when we've, and stuff. And so I'll share this with you. You can see them as, this was I think our second lambing, maybe third lambing season, and how much fun that they have with the babies. So we talk about the fun of being together as a family, and we do all of this stuff together, and they really enjoy it. And so our sheep really have multiplied. Most of our ewes, the first year they usually just have one, the second year they usually have two, and I have quite a few ewes that have triplets and quads, and so I'll show you some pictures of them here in a minute, but here's some of the cute pictures of them. And they multiplied, and we kept saving the best of the best and selecting for the qualities that we were looking for. And so you can kind of see how our flock has expanded. This was a picture I took 2 days ago. And so they are spread out all down that fence line up in the shade. But you can see what our grass looks like, even with us just doing rotational grazing. This is no fertilizers, no herbicides. We haven't done that for 10 years now. So this will give you an idea of what is possible, even if you're not doing the mob. The mob is the ultimate. If you can do that, you can do it with sheep too. You don't not just cattle. That is really going to improve your place, but at least do rotational grazing. This is how productive these sheep are. These are some of what I call my hippo mamas, and you can see how wide they are and how they're heavy pregnant. They're within about 2 weeks of having babies. Each one of those had triplets or quads. And so what happens with a sheep, they only have 2 nipples rather than like a cow, they have 4 nipples. Then you can't keep, obviously they're going to get knocked off. The 2 of them are not going to get enough or whatever if you have 3 or 4. And so we take those off and we use them, we put them on the bottle. Here's a mama with 4 as an example. If you don't catch them within the first, say, 4 to 6 hours after they're born, they are so fast, they're like little deer. And so these kids are my catchers. So now I used to have to run them down, and now they do it. So I get to sit on the 4-wheeler and wait for them to go run them down. But anyway, if you don't find them within 4 to 6 hours of being born, you're not going to get them caught. So I do have some ewes right now that are raising triplets. I don't have any raising quads, so fortunately we did do that. And so far they're doing okay, but it's a harder thing. So these are there's Val and as my catcher there. So these are some of the bottle babies that are my triplets and quads, and so every year like this year, I think we had 25 total. We have 12 right now that are still on the bottle, and this is what it kind of looks like. You look at their little tails when they're sucking on that bottle. When they're happy, the little tails are wagging. So I thought you guys would enjoy kind of seeing that. So, and we do sell directly to people. So we also had goats for a while, and you can see the goats here. We had Spanish goats. We had selected everything we are doing is parasite resistant. We don't want it to be dependent even upon wormers if we can keep from it. Our sheep, we do not worm the adults. The only time we deworm the sheep is when we wean the babies, because that's a stressful time period for them. Anything else that gets wormy, it doesn't get to stay. And so everything we've got as far as that goes in the same way. So we had goats for a while, and that worked wonderfully. And they did, our wooded area looks like a park where they were at. But then the drought happened, and we didn't have as much browse for them, and they realized the neighbors do, though. So they went and would hang out the neighbors, which the neighbors were good with that. And so we did that for a while. We tried to patch holes, and we had this one doe that she actually just made holes. She would go, okay, I think I went over there, so she made the hole. Everybody else waited till she made the hole, and then they all went through. So, and that was okay since the neighbors were good with them browsing there and that type thing. So we tolerated it for a little while. And then one morning we got up, and they were out on top of the hood of the truck, and it was the whole pack was just climbing and jumping and everything else. And my husband said, the goats are gone. So we don't have goats anymore. They are a pain to really keep in. And of course, with all of this, you have to have, especially in our circumstance, because we have a large acreage that we're not going to be able to protect it. We can't bring them in every night and put them in the barn. None of our sheep are ever sheltered or anything like that, or goats. They live in the weather no matter what the elements are 24/7. So they have to have protection from these guys, and of course neighbors' dogs and you name it. But if you were on a small acreage and you use the fence netting or something like that around to block off, then you could use that to actually protect from coyotes and neighbors' dogs and that type thing on a small acreage. So you wouldn't necessarily have to have a dog if you have that electric fence netting, because nothing's going to be able to get to them anyway. So there is a way around that. But if you're on a larger acreage where they're going to be getting out away from you, and you're not going to have some type of serious electric fencing or something like that, then the coyotes will eventually find them. And once they do, they are highly aggressive at it. So we have the Anatolian Shepherds. I chose the Anatolian Shepherds because they don't roam like the Great Pyrenees. You all probably are familiar with people having those, and they have a tendency to do a lot of checking out the neighbors and everything like that, and they can't protect your livestock if they're out visiting the neighbors. So these dogs really do a good job of staying with them. They live with them 24/7. You can see this. Here's one of our dogs. You see him right there. So they are with, no matter what the weather conditions are, they're with them, because if you have a shelter for them, you can't have a doghouse out there. They can't be in the doghouse and protecting the sheep, you know, because the sheep are vulnerable then. So they sleep right in the middle with them, in the weather, no matter what the conditions, 20 degrees below or whatever. They're very tough dogs. And they're good with our kids too. And we do, you know, you can already kind of tell there's a theme. We do everything all natural and that type thing. Our mama dog, she has made her own den every year. This year she got, this just happened this year. Her very first litter, she actually dug a hole in the ground, just like a wolf would, and raised her litter of pups in the ground. But since we were in this particular pasture, she already knew, she had already actually raised a couple of litters of puppies underneath this before. And so, and you talk about the kids and our kids messing with the dogs and the puppies. And you can see there's some of the pictures. And these dogs are so good with our kids, and I'm very particular with them as they're growing up to learn to be submissive to people, because they are such big dogs. You can't have these dogs not being respectful, especially since we have children. And so there's some pictures. This is our latest edition, and you can see how this ewe was sick, and he laid with her, and unfortunately she didn't make it, but he laid there with her until she passed. So before, I want to give you some advice before any of you step off into this adventure. Do not go buy any of your livestock at the sale barn, except there is one case that I would change that. Well, let me back up here. Let's just talk about this first, then we'll go to that. So make sure you have good fences and good water sources. Don't go buy livestock and then worry about that. Get all of that stuff in place first. If you decide to do the mob grazing, then you will need a solar electric fence charger, fence netting, or you can have the poly wire with the step-in post, depending on what type of livestock you're doing. If you're doing the sheep, you can probably get away with that poly wire and doing 3 wires, and the step-in posts have different little hash marks on them so that you can put it at different levels. So you would put one down low, one middle, and one at the top, and that would work for you doing even the sheep. But the cattle, you can actually get away with just 1 wire once they learn what it is. Let me go back to that, make sure. Yep. Okay. So this is where I was at with the, do not go to the sale barn and buy your cattle or your sheep or any of that. When I take something to the sale barn, I don't sell anything to people that is my junk. When I say from the ranch, I will not do that at all. If I sell anything from there, it's the best of the best. It's the ones that are worthy of staying there. Everything else I take to the sale barn, and it has no guarantee. It's a buyer beware, okay? So, and that's true of most people that take it there. The only exception is if somebody were doing a sellout and you had visited with them and you knew that they had a really good product, but they just were either health or older or just whatever reasons, personal circumstances made them sell out, and it was at the sale barn, then that might be okay, but you better make sure you've done your research on it. Make sure you talk to the seller and go see their operation. I learned early on, I said I started with 24 ewes, and then I did buy another person from Southwest Missouri. I bought from them, and they had told me they don't deworm either, and all that. And then I get them down here, and I didn't ask enough questions, I find out, because once I get them down here, within 2 weeks, almost all of them get wormy, they get scours. I lost I lost 20% of them within about a month. And then I had to deworm, bring everything in and deworm all of them. And then I just took everything and sold it at the sale barn, except for the ones that didn't get wormy. So there was about 20% of them that didn't get wormy and were able to live in our environment. Well, then I come to find out that this lady had water troughs that she kept apple cider vinegar in, and she kept baking soda out all the time. Well, so come to find out, her sheep weren't really parasite resistant because that changed the pH of their rumen, which made it not conducive to worms. And so they actually were not worm resistant. She was propping them up with baking soda and apple cider vinegar in her water troughs. Well, we have ponds. That's not going to happen. Well, that may have been what was killing the worms, huh? So let me see if I ask lots of questions. Also, be prepared to pay for better quality to start your foundation. So good things aren't cheap. We all know. You can go to the sale barn and you can buy them, yes, but you're not going to get what you're looking for. And you really got to start with a good foundation. You'll be able to expand very quickly, but don't get in a hurry. Start with the good things. To be realistic, ranching is a 24/7 job. It's hard to find good help. Don't be thinking that you're going to get a lot of people to come help you. It's an ongoing struggle with us to find people that first are willing to work that hard and to sweat, go out there and pick up rocks or whatever the case would be, build fence and that type thing. So you're going to need to be prepared that you're probably going to be providing the overwhelming majority of the labor. Weather and livestock are very unpredictable, and so you're not in control. You realize that, and it really does help you to get closer to God, because you realize there's so many things that is out of your control, and that you are dependent upon Him. And so the best thing that you can do is just do your best and pray and trust God with the rest of it. And so as you look at this, sometimes ranching is like this, where you look nice and you get to run the machine and all that, and then a lot of the time it's pretty crappy like that, because there are days that it's very dirty, nasty. That particular day, I was pregnancy testing a cow, and I don't know how many of y'all know how that goes, but you actually have a glove on and you stick it in their rectum, and you pat to feel if there's a baby in their uterus or not, from the rectum. And this particular cow, of course, very green grass and everything like that, then she decided to strain and it just blew out everywhere, and that's how it ended up. I was just very glad it didn't end up in my face. So, but sometimes it is a crappy job. But we talk about family and spending time with each other. These are the things kids get to do on ranches. They get to do things with playing with their little frog. Both of them love to do that, and fish, hunt. We have baby chicks. We have a little bit of everything. We've got baby chicks, baby turkeys. We've got cats. We do foraging. You can see here, this was this past fall. We had ironweed that we found right in our front yard. We've got persimmons and acorns. And those are bur oak acorns, and they're very big, and you can actually make your own flour out of those. So anyway, and so we went and picked those, and you can see my daughter had a good time playing with that. So it is about a lifestyle and really getting back to nature and the basics and just doing and enjoying things together. And so I just close with that and then see if anybody has any questions now. How much more time do we have? Let's see.
About 10 minutes.
Okay, so we can talk about questions, we can back up, or anything you guys want to do on that. Okay.
How do you do litter? How do you feed hay or like the mob grazing and rotational? I know you don't do grain. We're really grain dependent when it comes to winter.
Yeah. So in order to be grass finished, there are certain things you can still feed in the winter. When we were doing the mob grazing, we actually didn't feed anything. Now we have the last couple of winters because one, we had a drought and we didn't have any what you would call stockpile grass. But if you will calve and sync with nature, you can actually stockpile grass and then all you have to do is have minerals and occasional when there's snow on the ground or something like that to be able to supplement your cattle. So with the mob grazing and managing your grass and leaving what we call a stockpile, which is grass that has not been grazed, that didn't get over mature, that you've managed well, and that cattle are eating dry grass all winter. And so if you're able to do that and manage your place in that way, you actually can get through the winter without even using hay. We did that for several winters. Now we haven't the last couple, but what we do is we put out hay, let's just say what we're doing right now the last couple of years, and then we use a supplement that has no grain in it, that is still considered to be I guess fit within the grass finishing type parameters.
So you mean like corn, like
No corn, no wheat, no distiller's grain. I was trying to think what else in there, but you could do like alfalfa pellets and those type things, you see. Let's see. So that's one way to answer that. So you've got two different options there until you can get, if you have stockpile grass. Another thing you have to do in order to do that, because dry cows winter very easily, the cows that aren't suckling calves, then if you'll calve in sync with nature. So when does nature usually have babies? In the spring, and it's usually mid-spring. April to May is the calving window, and you wean the calves before winter actually sets in. Well, then that cow doesn't have as higher requirements upon her to be able to just feed the growing baby inside of her rather than nursing one and doing that. So if you're calving in the fall, that's not going to work for you to do that. You'll have to supplement with some type of protein. Okay. Did you have a question, Jaden?
Yeah, mine are mostly about the sheep.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you like to have a specific breed, or is it more like because I know you pick the ones that are more resistant to things? And
Yes.
Like, also, if you were to get one of those like, if you want to start out, do you just get one that's already been resistant, or how do you kind of?
You get from a flock that you know is proven. And so you're going to have to ask lots of questions. So you'll buy from somebody. Like I've set up a few people here locally that are doing it too. Some of them have bought bottle lambs from me because those are from my best of the best ewes that had triplets and quads, And so there's a lady here south of town that she's running, I think she's got 12 ewes on 7 acres, and actually only about 5 acres of that is usable. And she just had her first set of lambs this April. So she started last year with my bottle lambs.
And when you say like you deworm when they wean, are you talking about the mamas and the babies?
Nope, just the babies.
Oh, just the babies. Okay.
Just the babies. I don't. If I have to deworm the mamas, then they get marked and they don't get to stay. And then that way you're improving your genetics, and that ones that are able to live within your environment without you having to do a lot for them. The fact that we've made animals so dependent upon us has took the profitability out of it, and we've weakened their genetics, whereas we could strengthen it if we would actually select properly and do these type things. So.
And I was just wondering the breed.
Katahdin is what we have. We have Katahdin cross. They're not purebreds. We don't worry about papers. Pretty is as pretty does. You spell Katahdin Katahdin, and some of them there'll be a mix with Dorper. Dorper is a more muscular breed, but they have a lot of wool on them. So we're very particular. At first, when I started, I had some that got a lot of wool on their back and things, and it made it a little harder on them in the summer. And then once I got enough in my herd that I could start being more particular, then I culled those off and started selecting those that would shed quickly in the summer. So they get a little thicker coat, but they don't really get a big pile of wool on their back. And if they do, as long as they shed it off and they don't leave it on there in the summer, then I let them go ahead and stay as long as they're producing. But all of this is about selecting so that you can be less dependent upon other sources in order for you to, provide so that your livestock can actually do what that God designed them to do. Yes, ma'am.
Vaccinations. What do you do for both cattle and sheep?
The only thing that we use now is Covexinate when we actually castrate. because we do have tetanus still that is an issue. And that doesn't have any of the mRNA or any of that we so many people are concerned about. So we do still do that. But that's the only thing we use on any of our livestock is the Covexin-8. And there's other brands that do it, but it's the main thing is for tetanus is what we're looking at there. And we do that at castration, at weaning.
You don't do like the emasculation, you do
Yeah, we actually band and slice the testicle because it takes the pressure off of that, because if you hold something, as you know, then if you cut a slice in the testicle, each testicle, then it takes the pressure off and it dries up much faster and it's less painful for them.
What do you do in cases where you do have to deal with worms?
Well, now, to some degree, because we have such a big flock, then if something gets wormy, we don't just bring it in to deworm one. If it would have to be that I would have a group of them or something that had a problem, then I would peel those off, deworm them, keep them in a separate pasture, and then I would sell them. Or I would mark them with an ear tag, and then the next time we got them up after they got over being wormy, then I would pull them off and sell them. So that's how I do that. Sometimes it is that there's one that gets wormy and it either lives or it dies. It's that type thing, because it just doesn't make sense for us to bring in a whole flock and stress everybody out to get one animal, and there's no way to catch them in the pasture. So it's kind of a survival of the fittest type situation in that case.
How long after you deal with worms are they okay to
It varies. Usually, I would say, they get over the worms pretty quick, but then to build their body condition back up, you're looking at probably 4 to 6 weeks. This is on sheep, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
I should make sure
yeah.
that
You have time to probably like.
Yeah. Whenever they cut me loose, I guess. So.
Well, that's what she was saying, like we got 1 more minute.
Okay. All right. 1 more minute. So, anything else? Yes, ma'am.
So once you have like a worm issue and you said you don't keep them, so you just sell those, and do you like basically put that pasture on hold for a bit?
No.
Okay.
I do, and that's another thing about the mob and the rotational grazing is you don't leave them there more than 2 weeks. It breaks the worm cycle, so that helps them a whole lot there. And so that should, that helps break that particular cycle. But no, I don't ever, because they're going to be exposed to the worms, and you do want them to be exposed so that you can find those that are weak, genetically weak, and tend towards that. So you don't want to protect them too much, but at the same time, it makes good sense just in management to keep moving them around. So they go in a big rotation all the way around our place is what they do. And we go from one pasture to the next, and they stay not more than 2 weeks in any pasture.
Okay. So once you have an animal that has worms, you said you don't keep them. So do you cull those or do you resell?
No, I cull them and I take them to the sale barn. I don't sell them directly to anybody, and that's why I was saying don't go buy anything at the sale barn, because that is a buyer beware. That's what people have culled them. I either cull them for their udder or because they have got wormy. So there's usually 2 reasons why that I will send one to the sale barn, and I make no guarantees about them. It is completely that. Now, if you buy something from the ranch and where I have said I've got these 10 set ewes, I'm just putting together packages because I've done that for people too. And then those, I'm saying to you, everything I know about them, they're what you're looking for. They're going to have all the things, the characteristics that we've been selecting for.
How do you know they're wormy?
Their body condition will be part of it. They usually get a little bit of a muddy butt or a dirty butt, and so there's 2 elements to that. Sometimes they'll get a bottle jaw when they're really, really wormy, and it causes them to have a little pouch kind of underneath their chin. If you look at their eyes, it's called a Famacha scale. They'll have either really pale or bright red, just like you and I. If you flipped your eyelid out, you would see it would be really bright pink, reddish look. Well, when sheep or goats, for that matter, are wormy, that gets really pale, and it actually can be even white. I've even seen them be so wormy that it would be white. And so because their red blood cells and all that type stuff, they're being depleted. The worms are sucking the life out of them, literally.
So how many goats, oh Lord, how many sheep do you have? Like,
I've never raised sheep, it's always been cattle. You said that, the collie or whatever had 7 acres. How many actual sheep can you put on a small space?
Yeah, well, it's going to depend on each place. Like that particular person, she has really, she's doing the mob grazing with the sheep, and she's using the electric fence around, so she's doing an excellent job of managing her place. And last year when it got dry, she went and got hoses so that she could irrigate her place and keep the grass growing, so that during the driest part of the summer that they didn't have that slump. So she's done several things. She's really worked hard at it. So it's just going to depend on your particular, how much work you put into it and what type of soil that you have, and that type thing. You know, if you live on high ground and it's real rocky and you don't have a lot of moisture, and you're not going to have as much grass to be able to grow to begin with. And then there's the other end of this, where if you're down in the valley where you have little muddy spots and the grass doesn't grow as good because it stays too wet all the time. You know, so you're going to have ups. I guess there's good and bad about both locations. You don't have to worry about the muddy spots on top of the hill, but down in the valley, you're going to have a lot more grass in the areas that do maintain normal moisture. So that's a hard one, I guess. I just really can't give you a specific number and say this is exactly what you would need to do. You just have to look at your particular environment and your management style. Okay. All right, thank you all. And I have my business cards over here. It's got my cell phone number on it. Feel free to give me a call, and I'll help you in any way I can. All right, thank you.
Thank you